All right, let's talk about cracking the code on what can feel like one of the toughest parts of the GED science test, human biology. We're not just going to go over how your body works, more importantly, we're going to look at how the test works.
You know that feeling, right? You see a big, dense paragraph about alveoli or enzymes and your pulse just starts to quicken. I get it. You are so not alone in that. That feeling of being totally overwhelmed by science jargon is exactly what we're going to tackle head on.
And, that racing heart is actually a perfect example of your circulatory system in action. So by the end of this, you're not only going to understand what that means, but you'll have the strategies to turn that test anxiety into pure confidence.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. Think of your body like a blueprint for a building. It all starts with the smallest living units, cells. Then groups of similar cells get together to form tissues. Tissues work together to build organs, like your heart or your lungs. And finally, those organ systems team up to create organ systems that do all the big jobs. This is the basic map we'll be using.
First up, the respiratory system. And look, we're not just talking about breathing in and out. We're talking about a strategy for totally dissecting any GED question that comes your way about it. So here is a mind-blowing fact for you. Your lungs are packed with millions of tiny little air sacs called alveoli. If you could take all of them and flatten them out, their total surface area would cover an entire tennis court. It's incredible. And that massive surface area, that's the secret to getting oxygen into your blood super fast. And the process that makes it all work is called diffusion. It's actually a really simple but powerful idea. Just think about it. When you breathe in, your lungs are crowded with oxygen. Your blood, which is just coming back from your body, doesn't have much at all. So oxygen naturally just moves. It diffuses from that crowded space in your lungs into the less crowded blood. It's just nature's way of balancing things out.
Okay, now this is a classic GED-style passage. You've got two groups, Group 1 with healthy lungs and Group 2 with damaged alveoli, which means they have less of that tennis court-sized surface area. And the evidence? Well, Group 2 gets winded way sooner and has less oxygen in their blood. Let's see how the test asks us about this. So the question really just wants you to connect the dots. How does that idea of surface area explain the evidence, which is the lower oxygen saturation? Just take a look at your options. Which one gives the real scientific reason for what the clinic saw? And this perfectly sets up our first major tool, the CER snapshot. It stands for Claim, Evidence, Reasoning. The claim here is that the structure of the alveoli matters for gas exchange. The evidence is that Group 2 had lower oxygen levels. And the reasoning, that's the science, is that less surface area means less room for diffusion to happen. That line of thinking leads you straight to the right answer, which is A.
Now let's move on to our next system and see how this all builds. We're going to look at the circulatory system, which is basically your body's incredible internal delivery service. I love this analogy because it makes it so clear. Arteries are the major highways carrying that oxygen-rich blood away from the heart. Veins are the return roads bringing the oxygen-poor blood back. And the capillaries? Well, they're the tiny little local streets where the actual deliveries of oxygen and the pickups of waste happen. Okay, another passage, another claim. This time, we've got a coach who says interval training is better for oxygen delivery. And the evidence they give is that the interval group has a lower heart rate after exercise and higher oxygen levels. So, the big question is, does the evidence actually back up what the coach is saying? Let's think this through using that same CR strategy. A lower recovery heart rate? That means the heart is stronger, more efficient. It doesn't have to work as hard to get back to normal. And higher oxygen saturation? That means the system is just doing a better job loading up the blood with oxygen. Both of those things are signs of improved efficiency, which, directly supports the coach's claim.
All right, on to system number 3, the digestive system. Now with this topic, the GED often shifts its focus from reading passages to making you interpret data, like from graphs and charts.
So let's take a look at this chart. We're testing an enzyme called amylase, which is what helps you digest carbs. Along the bottom, you can see the pH level. That's just a measure of acidity. And going up the side, we have the enzyme activity. It's pretty obvious, right? There's this huge spike in activity right in the middle at a pH of 7. Now, here is a question that pops up on pretty much every science test ever. They want to know if you can tell the difference between the independent and dependent variables. In other words, what did the scientists change on purpose, and what was the result they measured? And here is your absolute secret weapon for this. the 10-second trick. The independent variable is what I change. In this experiment, the scientists changed the pH level, right? The dependent variable is what depends on that change. The enzyme's activity totally depended on the pH. It's such a simple little mnemonic, but it makes these questions a total breeze.
Okay, let's go back to that graph. The question wants the best conclusion. To answer this, all you have to do is find the peak. Where is that bar the highest? It's right there at pH 7, which is neutral. So the data very clearly supports the conclusion that amylase works best near a neutral pH. Easy enough.
Now here's where the real magic happens, and it's something the GED loves to test. It's understanding that these systems don't work in isolation. They are constantly talking to each other, working together to create the energy that keeps you going.
This is the big picture, the whole energy story in just 3 simple steps. First, your digestive system breaks down food into fuel, like glucose. Second, your respiratory system brings in the oxygen you need to actually burn that fuel. And third, the circulatory system acts like the delivery truck, bringing both the fuel and the oxygen to every single cell in your body. They're a perfect team.
So, we've covered the biology, but way more importantly, we have built a toolkit. Let's do a quick recap of the 4 most powerful strategies you can take with you right into the test.
Seriously, think of these as your cheat codes. First, the CER snapshot for any passage that's making an argument. Second, the 10-second trick for any experiment question. Third, the graph decoding method. Always read the title and axes first, then look for the trend. And finally, when you hit a crazy word like alveoli, just mentally swap it out for its simple definition, like tiny air sacs, and see if the sentence makes more sense.
Look, you now have the blueprint for the human body and the strategies to decode the test. You actually know the rules of the game now. So the only question left is what's the first passage you're going to practice on? Go find one. You've totally got this.